Om. This video is about Bhakti Yoga, which is the yoga of love and devotion. In the Bhagavad Gita, Bhakti Yoga is one of the 4 forms of yoga that Krishna teaches to Arjuna. In contrast to, say, Jnana Yoga, which uses the solar energy channel, the Pingala, which is on the right side of the body, Bhakti Yoga primarily uses what is called Ida Nadi, which is the lunar energy channel on the left side of the body. So it is very polarized in a way that contrasts the polarization that we experienced in Jnana Yoga, which is very focused inward towards the self and is utilizing intellect and the power of discernment. By contrast, Bhakti Yoga is more outwardly focused and is about relationship to divinity, to God or goddess, or to whatever way you conceptualize ultimate reality. It's also much more geared towards emotional states and states of longing, as well as states of ecstasy and bliss. Sometimes Bhakti Yoga is known as the path of tears. These are the tears of longing and suffering that a devotee experiences in the sense of separation from their beloved, from the supreme divinity. And it's also tears of ecstasy and joy when the devotee experiences union and the bliss of uniting with their beloved. Bhakti Yoga has a lot to do with the transmutation of emotional energies. And emotional energies are aspects of our psyche that are closely related to our instincts and to our subconscious drives. So the 4 primary instinctual drives that compel humans to act the ways that they act are the drives for food, sex, sleep, and self-preservation. And from these 4 instincts, there arise a whole bunch of different emotions, especially rajasic and tamasic emotions, such as desire, attachment, egoism, anger, jealousy, greed, and pride. So these emotional states are not good or bad, but they can lead to suffering in many cases. However, these rajasic and tamasic emotional states are energetically the same substance as more spiritual or elevated emotional states, such as love, devotion, trust, satisfaction, bliss, hope, and the sense of spiritual connection. So the energy that is creating these emotions is the same, in the same way that hot and cold are the same. It's just a different energetic state. They're both measurements of energy, of temperature. But depending on the way that that energy is expressed, it can either manifest as hot or as cold. So through this yoga of love and devotion, we utilize emotions and these instinctual drives, and we channel the emotions and instinctual energies towards a divine being, some kind of deity or some kind of concept of reality that we can love and surrender to. In order to understand a little bit about why working with deities is such a powerful and important practice in yoga, we can talk a little bit about Carl Jung, who was a psychologist in the 20th century, because a lot of his work helps to translate certain concepts from Hindu and other mythological systems into modern day thinking, and to explain religious behavior in a way that makes sense without necessarily having to believe in any particular religion. So Carl Jung had several interesting theories that are relevant to us here, some of which actually drew very heavily on Hindu thought. And one of those theories was called the theory of the archetypes. So what Carl Jung noticed is that he would have these long sessions with his clients where they would describe their dreams to him, and they would have all these symbolic elements that would rise within their dreams. And then in some cases, there would be people who came from very different cultural backgrounds who were not exposed to the same kinds of cultural elements in their upbringing, but who had the same kinds of symbols coming up in their dreams. And from these observations, Carl Jung started to form this theory about archetypes and the collective unconscious. So according to this theory, there is a collective unconscious that is shared at least by all humanity, if not by all sentient beings, in which there are certain symbolic elements that get expressed as archetypes, as these symbolic beings and elements that get expressed in dreams and in imagination that communicate to the conscious mind what is going on in the subconscious. According to the yogic system of thought, this is very similar to how we understand the causal body as well as the waking and dreaming states, where dreaming is essentially a projection of the subtle impressions in the causal body of a particular individual person. And then those subtle impressions project into a dream experience. But when we are waking, it's actually a collective projection. It's a projection of the karmic seeds of countless beings throughout countless universes. So it's a matrix of causality. And the same kinds of symbols that we experience in dreams can also be experienced sometimes through omens in waking reality. But that is a whole other topic that would take a really long time to discuss. So I'm just mentioning it here to compare how dream symbolism can also come up in waking reality as well. In modern times, there are major trends towards secularism and materialism on one hand, and then also towards religious dogmatism on the other hand, which are these extremes in thought and belief and human activity that are quite different in the ways that tribal societies, for example, lived for thousands of years. And some of those changes in the ways that people are thinking and behaving have been good in some ways, and in other ways they have caused a lot of psychological disorder and mental health issues and disconnection with nature and with these more instinctual, primal elements of humanity. There are what are called affect images, which are symbolic images or mythological narratives that wire into the psyche. So we take in stories and images and ideas, and over time these images and ideas begin to seep into the subconscious, especially as a young child, but also as an adult. And over time, these mythological narratives and cultural concepts and symbols begin to shape the way that we think and feel. So this can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing depending on which images and narratives you're taking in. So there are some images and narratives that are very toxic and can cause a lot of issues psychologically, even physically within people. So there are a lot of images that people take in through media, through sports teams and celebrities, and all these different things that we're bombarded with, advertisements, for example. And a lot of times these images are not promoting a very healthy message. They're trying to get us to buy things or to feel like we are less than, or that our bodies aren't good enough because they look different than the celebrity or what have you. And these can program in really toxic patterns of thought and behavior. We can also take in certain dogmatic understandings of religious mythology, for example. So if we belong to a really fundamentalist form of a religion, then people start to grasp onto these symbols and think that they're objective reality when really they're symbolic representations of subjective realities and deep metaphorical aspects of reality. So whether it is total materialism or it is religious fundamentalism, these kinds of extremes can really become toxic in different ways. So as we are working through this program on yoga, we are going to work on internalizing healthy narratives and symbols. So this includes narratives, myths about Hindu deities, which I find personally to help to explain certain aspects of reality in a very interesting symbolic manner that really makes it hit home in a way that sometimes philosophy just doesn't. And through these symbols, we are also communicating back to the subconscious. So in the same way that the subconscious or the causal body can project into symbolic experiences in dreams, we can also send messages back by internalizing symbols and images and sounds and things of this nature. And this will begin to transform the condition of our causal body in our subconscious. And that in time can help us to begin to think and feel in ways that are more spiritually aligned, that are much healthier and are more conducive to states of awareness and love and unity. So there are a lot of different archetypes, like a wise old man archetype, the shadow archetype, which are the parts of ourselves that we repress because they're not socially acceptable. But one archetype that I'm going to point out here is the mother goddess archetype, or the earth mother. And this can be found in a lot of different mythologies, including Egyptian mythology as Isis, Norse mythology as Frigg, Incan mythology as Pachamama, Greek mythology as Gaia, and Indian mythology as Lakshmi. So these are all these different goddesses who, while they have different attributes in different mythologies, and their worship has historically been very different, they still share a certain underlying current of certain themes and energies and elements that link them together and make them similar to each other as mother goddesses.